All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today with someone that you guys know very well. And if you don't, you will find out who he is today. His Twitter will be in the description, Discord in the description. His name is Adam, aka GoCarp. And he is, I would say, the best, if not in the top three with his other two agents of people that figure out what the hell is going on in Palantir's government business. These guys quite literally do hours of due diligence every single week to better inform the community, which is why this community is so special. We have all these people across the world crowdsourcing due diligence on how Palantir's government business is currently evolving and what the trajectory of that will look like. And over the past couple of weeks, we found a lot of interesting stuff, and Adam's going to be here to break down. Adam, thank you for being here today.
No, appreciate you having me. Just real quick, I'd like to just give a shout out to Bobcat Gang, who's been helping me with this. Big shout out to DV. He's definitely been doing his thing this past couple of weeks. I've been super busy with work, so he's definitely been stepping up. And 007 is dealing with some weather issues. So I hope him and his people are all safe down there. So, shout out Bobcat Gang and obviously the rest of the fellowship, of course.
I love it. We got a lot to talk about before we get started and dive into some of the new updates in the government business, which is continuously seeming to become the broader moat of Palantir is this government business. Everyone loves talking about commercial. I love talking about commercial, but government is where there are tens of billions of dollars that are going to be allocated over the next decade. We hit $40. Give me your raw thoughts. How are you feeling about the stock right now?
Go see my Joker meme of Batman animated series, dumping as much money as you can, as sub 10 or near that range, and seeing $40, you'd feel like Joker laughing at nothing in Batman animated. It's comical at this point. There are so many forces that are driving the stock up, obviously. Am I happy to see it? Of course. I really look at the price more for buying purposes. I have no reason to sell at this point. Everyone's in a different financial position. What might be good for me might not be good for you. I plan on holding for longer. It's very nice to see, especially after holding for already 4 years. It will come back down at some point. I think, if I remember correctly, we reported earnings on August 5th. And that day, we literally touched 20, went to 29, and we have not been in the 20s since. We have only gone up. So was August 5th the last day that we ever had a chance to buy in the 20s? I don't know. Time will tell. But from literally 20 to 40 since August 5th is just an absolute insane ride. And, I'm all here for it. We'll obviously consolidate and crash back down to earth eventually. I think on that topic of when do we, slow down a bit, I think it's really going to come out on, the next earnings. I think Palantir, if they don't do, call it 40% growth, and they don't have to, but if they don't do 40% growth, I don't think the stock will keep running and running and running and running. But thank you, Genio. I know it's my hair. It's the hair. But
no, it's the fact that you're buying Palantir at 10. That's what, honestly, dude, my hinge profile should just be the Palantir position. Like, that should be enough, right? That's good enough.
If they're in for it for your Palantir position, they're not the right one. That's a whole other topic we can talk on. 20 to 40, it's crazy. So, when it comes back down, I think everyone just needs to relax. It will. Yes, you can say that 100%. If they don't do the 40%, I think you'll see a sell-off, and it will be more for profit taking. I think, and I obviously have no idea of who's doing the buying and selling right now. I'm assuming most of it is the suits, and they are the ones pushing it higher. So they're obviously building their core position due to the S&P rules that they're not going to be, selling on a regular day-to-day algo basis. That's partially why we're going so up and why we're staying at this level. We're going to build support somewhere. Can we keep going? 100%. But they're going to, come down, and we'll build support somewhere, and we'll be in a price range for a bit. if they blow earnings out of the water, and I mean, that 40% or more, could the stock keep running? Yes. If they do 39%, could it keep running? Maybe, but it's ran so much and it's keeping on to run, which who knows what price it will be in we actually report. Is it 40? Is it 45? Is it 38? Who the hell knows? So I think obviously that's going to play a big factor into it. But even when it does, and these suits do capture their short-term massive gains, because what is 20 to 40 in, call it 50 days or whatever, 60 days. I don't know. It's huge. And who knows where else it would be. So I think for everybody that's been here since the beginning, like you and I, no shocker. For people that are semi new to it, a little surprised considering how much it moves and how quickly, but we knew it was always a volatile, little pilly. It was never not going to be even the fact that it is so volatile still is a little surprising to me. Granted, it's maybe because it's so new being included into the S&P, but it's just enjoy the ride. If it keeps going, enjoy it. Do what you need to do for your own personal selves. If that means buy more, buy more. If that means sell, take your profit. No one said don't take profit. If it means you're going to sell calls, put spreads, whatever, everyone has their own little game. Just, I invest in the company and the company is not the stock. And that's really the main thing that people need to differentiate.
All right. I love it. And I agree with pretty much everything you said as well around price sentiment action. And, we don't know where the price is going to go, but earnings.
It's also a very high short interest right now. That's also part of it. Eventually, these shorts are going to cover and will build support at a higher level. And that's the whole point. Higher highs, higher lows, you get bigger and, stronger. But, it will be very interesting to see in 6 months. These shorts are going to have to learn. Stop shorting it. They're just not going to win. They might win in a week, 2 week span, but they're not winning in a quarter to quarter or 6 month span. They're getting absolutely blown off. And what I don't get is you're seeing it in the numbers. Never mind Carp and the team talking about it. It's just in the numbers. That's stuff that they can relate to. Just stop it. But be my guest.
All right, so let's get into the government stuff. We got a lot of different topics to get into. I'll give you the floor. What is kind of the first one you want to get into, or you can give a high-level overview of some of the research you've been doing over the past couple of weeks?
So I think the main stuff that we should really just focus on for today is, Maven, because there's been a couple different pieces of Maven that have come out. So Maven, my robots. If they Maven, they got three. Yeah, well, there's 2 additional contracts. They got $100 million on Friday, September 13th, and they got another $100 million on Friday, September 18th.
Okay, so let me set this up, because this is actually something you and I were confused about. So we got a $480 million contract for 5 years 2 months ago. That was all Maven. And then we got 2 $100 million contracts, one right after AIPCon and then one a week after, $99 million for 5 years, both of them. Mm-hmm. And you and I were thinking, hey, is this $200 million a part of the 480, or are they individual separate contracts? And I'll pull them up in a second. What are your current thoughts on that?
And I know I kind of was going back and forth for a while, and and granted, it's just because they were giving the information out late. So that's why it was very hard to decipher in the beginning. But they've put more information out for the one on September 18th, not September 13th. I don't know why. I don't know why one is getting more press coverage than the other. Maybe we get more info on it later. I have no idea. If anything, you would think they would do it as a combo. Like, okay, we did one PR for 2 Maven deals that were a week apart. But they've only focused on the September 18th one. And even from what we've been able to find out, that's the September 18th one, I can tell, because that's the 800 figure, I believe. That's the 18th. Yeah, and it says 18th. See, the other one was like 100. It was 99.1. This one was 99.8.
Right.
So with this one, it is definitely separate from the original Maven deal. So
and you're confident on that?
100%.
All right, so that's another 100 million that we add to revenue. Then.
Right. Okay. So that original Maven deal was coming from a different office, and I should have pulled it up real quickly.
Yeah, as DV says in the chat, because Maven and Maven Smart Systems are not the same.
All right, DV, go back to bed. It's a little early by you.
So that means over 5 years, that's another 20 million a year, basically in top line. Well, with 200.
So it's obviously not a lot, and we'll talk about it. But one of the main things, and we saw it from a video yesterday that that me and DV watched, and I posted it, and it was from Colonel Joe Callahan and this woman Amelia, I believe her name is, and she wrote the Maven report, that one that Sean posted, and I obviously read, and I encourage everyone to, is they said with Maven that it's their big issue right now with Maven is not Maven itself, but figuring out the compute cost. And that's why I think right now we're seeing a lot of the 5-year 100 million, because that they kind of understand. And if you think about it, they bought that 10 years in compute. So they bought 5 extra years thinking, all right, we're covered for these 5. And God forbid if we go over, all right, we're covered because we bought 10 years of compute usage from whatever it was from a few quarters ago. So they're in lockstep with the government right now. And that was a really interesting comment from Callahan, because if they're talking about compute usage, and obviously since Chad's in the chat and he's a real computer guy and knows the stuff, not me. To me, that means more usage, more compute usage equals more cost for Palantir, which means more money is getting exchanged either from their end or getting it to their vendors, to whomever. So more money needs to flow. And that's why you saw these contracts, because they're getting to start more usage out of it. And with that $100 million Maven deal, this one came from the Army Research Lab. The other one came from, I believe, the CDAO, the Chief Digital Artificial Intelligence Office. So 2 different offices, 2 different lines. That's how I know it's different money. And even if you read the PRs, and even strictly from Palantir's, the one from the 5 years for the big one, a lot more in depth about the macro.
Yeah.
This one kind of was very similar to that. It's because it's not anything new. It's just more people are using Maven. But the key thing is the one for the 5 years for 500, Shannon Clark and the team, they were mostly talking about the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the COCOMs, the combatant commands. This is really talking about the military services, the Army, the Air Force, the Space Force, the Navy, and the Marines. So that right there is the 0 to 1. It's trickling down. My favorite Department of Defense organizational chart. You're starting to see the trickle down. The problem is on why it's not, extravagant and, oh my God, okay, 100 million, nice chunk of change. But like you said, it's 20 million a year. It's not moving the needle very much on a $90 billion company. You know what I mean? So, but they are budgeting and they are figuring out, okay, this is the cost to run Maven across all the combatant commands and across all the services of, the armed forces. And they got that covered basically for 5 years, maybe so, maybe not. This is pure speculation, and that's why when these contracts end, it might be the same 5 years, because they're very big right now, both Palantir, and I don't blame them, but the Department of Defense and the Pentagon in MOSA, they don't want vendor lock-in. And interestingly enough, even in the video, and this video was 2 days old, and Callahan and Amelia are talking, and they said specifically, there might be a day when we want to upload a C3 application. And I was stunned to actually hear a guy of his, caliber to mention C3 AI. Right. But it just goes to show you that all of these companies, they may have a extremely small, tiny niche to fill that Palantir will not fill. Either A, they haven't figured it out, or in what they said, and this was actually the best thing I heard from them, is they don't want to be bothered. If it's something so tiny and minuscule that it's, quote, breadcrumbs to Palantir. And think about how big Palantir is thinking of. And they know that someone else using Foundry or something else that they built themselves can figure it out, but be integrated and used in the ecosystem that is the Maven Smart System. And that is the key. It is a full-on ecosystem that they have built. It is infrastructure. And that's what the key thing that they are talking about is infrastructure. They're able to upload C3 or whatever application might be. But it was shocking to hear that. But they are figuring it all out. And it looks like it's going to just take them 5 years to figure out what is the whole cost to use this piece of operating system, Maven Smart System, for everyone in the Department of Defense who needs it. You know, if you're some lonely soldier that's being deployed to, you know, Iraq, I don't know if you're going to have a need for Maven, but your commanding officer might need. And God forbid, in the emergency case that you need to use Maven for whatever reason, you might be trained on it and you might use it, God forbid, but your permissions will be restricted. But that's going really off the track right now. So two different contracts, same lifespan. The 13th, I'm very convinced it's a different contract as well. So you're talking about $700 million basically in 5 years for Maven. Yeah. No, we're not, because a few days later, we got and this was mentioned in the video, Tradewinds, which is basically the App Store, or they're trying to build the App Store for the Department of Defense, from my understanding. Tradewinds is basically an App Store. So like you have an iPhone and you go on the App Store and you download X or Discord or whatever you might download. In my case, you put on homepage Palantir Investor Relations and you check it every morning at 7 a.m. And you have an app like that. But so I don't need Tradewinds for that kind of stuff. But that's the point. It's like a Tradewinds. And they put out a contract opportunity for an IDIQ, which is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, basically meaning $700 million worth of Maven is going to be basically, you know, used. Right. Or this was, excuse me, let me rephrase that. I'm getting them confused because there was two Tradewinds things that came out. The 100 million that we're talking about, the 99.8 is for Tradewinds. And I'm looking directly at the SamGov. So they put it out there. It was for Tradewinds. So they are putting Maven Smart System on Tradewinds. So if you have access to Tradewinds, you can use Maven Smart System for your operation. Okay.
And any agency in the government can use it if they download it from Tradewinds.
I don't know about the limitations about that. I'm sure it's restricted to a degree. I don't think Department of Health people have access to Tradewinds. It's strictly for Department of Defense, if my understanding is correct. So it was a little bit different than the PR because they've mentioned Tradewinds, but it's not in the PR that they put out on September 20th. But that's specifically what it's for. So it's 5 years, $20 million. It was awarded by the Army Research Lab, who has had contracts with Palantir in the past. So they're building this stuff with the Army Research Lab. So this is no shocker. What I want to know now is what's going on with that September 13th $100 million? Where is that really being folded into play? And we did get a separate Tradewinds IDIQ, which is up to $700 million. So people are going to then be able to basically buy Maven off of Tradewinds, and they'll be able to pull money that is up to the 700 million, I believe. Just like the GSA that they got, that was 650 mil. People can pull of those funds up to 650. I believe people will be able to pull up to 700 million to use Maven for Tradewinds. And that's separate from this 100 million that we're talking about. See, it's very disjointed and jointed because, you know, they awarded $100 million for Tradewinds, and now they're giving another contract opportunity towards Tradewinds Maven.
So I think the broader point here is that Maven itself is such a special system that the government is realizing they need to continuously get access to. And the fact that they're giving them these additional contracts, 700 million over 5 years. Again, now that the company's a $90 billion company, it seems like it's not a ton, but it is adding additional revenue at the end of the day. And I think what it speaks to, and I guess this is the next topic we can segue into, is the broader reacceleration of the government growth. What stuff have you seen over the past couple of weeks in your research that's telling you real, maybe 30 to 45% in the next year and a half government acceleration is coming?
I don't know if we're going to get to 40% in fiscal year 25. Unfortunately, with the defense budget for fiscal year 25, the government was so out of whack that when they were finalizing and passing everything, they basically just gave everything that Palantir is involved in. Basically, they just plateaued it to make it easy for themselves. And, and you saw this the other day when Shyam went to testify, and he was with other heads of, companies like Palantir, like Shield AI was there. Skydio, I think, was there, a couple other ones. And basically, they're out there saying you need to spend more. And the committee is basically saying, yeah, we know we need to, but how do we do it? How's the appropriate way? How do we vet things that's so new? So I think in fiscal year 26, we'll start to see a bump in that increase that they're constantly talking about. I don't know if they're going to go from 1% to 5%. It might go from 1% to 2%. Maybe 2.5%. I don't know. I think a lot of it also is going to be the state of the world. If they're fighting multiple wars, they're obviously going to have a lot of reason to replenish a lot of hardware and ammo versus let's invest in software that might take a year. Right. The ironic part about it, though, with Callahan in that video, just to tie everything together, he was talking about the guide missions. And I joked with Bobcat Gang like a few months ago. I go, every fucking 3 months, we get an update and it's more guide. All they do is do more guide missions. But we finally got the answer and you saw it, and Shyam told us this, but we couldn't figure it out because it was so deceptive. When he talks about, I don't want proof, when he talks about proof, not proof of concept, the guide missions now basically are 90-day trials, right? In the 90 days, basically their mindset is if you haven't figured it out by 75 days, they're rolling it over into the next guide mission. You have basically 10 days to figure it out, if not exactly into the next one. So that's why they keep adding these, because they're finding new issues and finding new solutions, or finding new problems and not finding the solutions, or halfway there. So it's really just a timing thing. And being the fact that they are committed, and this is the structure that they're going with, we'll start to see that big government increase. And I say it all the time, it's going to be the Titan timeline. So I think by 26, maybe it goes up to 1%. And then 2027, maybe it's up from this number to 1.5, 2, maybe 3. So we just got to be patient. It's coming. But even if they plateau it, which they are for this year, Palantir will still grow. And we're starting to see that. There's no denying that. And obviously, other than Maven, there's obviously a lot of opportunities out there. Maven is obviously a big one that is also being the big cash cow at the moment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Maven will continue to grow.
Let me ask you this question. And this one is more about objectivity. For those that politically disagree, you can disagree. It's the nature of having a conversation, but I think it's worth discussing. There were some pagers that blew up a couple weeks ago. Do you think that Palantir has played any role in the events that have been going on in Lebanon and Israel?
I'm actually glad you asked this, because I did want to talk about real world events and connect it to Palantir, because I think that's more important than going into the ins and outs of how this contract is tied to Army Research Lab versus this one is tied to CDAO, because they don't care about the money. They do, but they don't care. They care about the mission. And they've said it. We'll step up and we'll be there. And they're probably working right now in North Carolina for the hurricane. But as it relates to the pagers, and obviously Lonsdale was on CNBC and they asked him and he can't answer it. Were they involved? Maybe. I don't know. I can't say yes or no. Unfortunately, Mossad, Netanyahu, Hezbollah, they don't call me. They don't tell me what's going on and be like, hey, Gokar, yo, you wouldn't believe what happened this morning. If they do, if they want to, hit me up in the Discord or Twitter. Depending on which side you are, I might turn you in, but that's your own risk. Were they involved in that act specifically? Maybe, and maybe that's part of what this warp speed supply chain product is how they can secure a supply chain. Because just to use that as an example, basically for those that don't know, Israel basically set up a fake company for 15 years. This was a 15-year operation. And they had real customers that were buying pagers, and they had terrorists who were buying pagers. And they were a distributor, from my understanding, but because they're extremely smart and they have engineers, they were taking real pagers that they were buying for business purposes and then re-engineering them with a bomb. And it was absolutely an insane operation. And just to dig a little bit deeper into here, the Financial Times had a great piece on how deep they infiltrated. And obviously, they turned the pager into a listening device too. So they knew everything.
Wow.
But just to go into how deep, they said they hacked into smart TV remotes. So if you have a smart TV, you're fucked. Because they said that they were able to confirm audio voice through the smart TV remote if they needed a location and they didn't know who was who, because they're building this operation for 15 years. So you need to confirm everything. And this is really where Maven comes into play. So there's many different forms of intelligence. There's signal intelligence, there's human intelligence, there's biological intelligence, and you have to capture all of this information and data. And what they would use Maven for is for an ISR, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance form, is Maven would pull all that data from whatever system and show it to the commander, and they'd be able to tie in, okay, the terrorist is at, 45 North, 73 West, wherever, whatever the hell that might be. And they'll be able to confirm that because they'll have all this intelligence. They'll have facial recognition. They'll have the satellites for imagery. If he's near a smart TV or if he's using a cell phone or a pager, they'll have intercepted it. And if you and for those that don't understand the depths of Palantir and their mission to protecting the West, when it comes to war, and this is kind of why I do encourage any Palantir investor, and I know it might be hard for some, but to really understand what war is and see it. Because it's very, very easy to just shy away from it and just not look. And I do recommend that most of the time. But when you see what really goes on, you'll understand why it's so important to be so strong you want your enemy to be like, no, let's not even fight. And I do feel like what's going on with Lebanon, and it's not the Lebanese, it's Hezbollah backed by Iran, is I feel, and from what I'm reading, is the Iranian leadership, half of them, they can't go back. They've made their bed and now they have to lie in it.
Right.
The other half, they are scared fucking shitless. And that is exactly what you want to see in a modern army, is that you are so advanced, you are so much better than the other side that they won't even think to get out of line. And that's really the main point of what Palantir and all these defense contractors are trying to build for the army of 2030. So were they involved in the physical making of the pager? Maybe, I don't know, but they are heavily involved.
I feel like the supply chain of the pager and the intelligence and getting it into the right hand, I feel like that potentially could have been done via something like a Gotham. Obviously, we're just speculating. You could easily see that happening.
100%. It could have 1,000% have been a supply chain that they were building and using on Foundry, and we'll never know. And that's the thing. But they did it. And the key thing is, even if it wasn't done on Foundry or Gotham, JADC2 and Maven is in play right now. And that's why I think every Palantir investor, and I know I said it's tough, especially when you see graphic, bloody, gross images, and you could stay away from those, obviously. You'll know when people die without seeing that. Is with Maven and with Palantir, you should definitely at the bare minimum be following CENTCOM. They're very active, obviously. That is one of the combat commands using Maven, and they're constantly tweeting about updates of what's going on. So, just to make it all kind of, connect, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, you have Iran in Iran, and then you have the Houthis in Yemen. And then you obviously have Hezbollah militias and ISIS resurging in Iraq and Syria to a degree. So it's a really, really scary world out there. And now is the time that I think some people are on the fence saying, you got to keep going. I'm talking about from our side, the West. You got to keep going, pedal to the metal. It's time. We got to, build a better world and hope a better monster does not spring up. That's the problem. You never know what's going to come after. Right. But that's depending on how you rebuild everything. And that's a whole other thing. The other half is saying so much damage has been done. Stop it. And we don't live there. That's part of the issue is we're not there in the middle of the, we're lucky. We're living in the United States. You can go out of your front door and not worry about a missile landing over your head right now.
Yeah.
So, it's a real serious situation. And the main thing is with that missile attack, and I'm not saying Palantir is shooting down missiles, just to put this in perspective, including the April attack, 400 ballistic missiles basically had been fired at Israel since April from Iran. 400. Now, the first batch in April was telegraphed.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming. They knew when it was coming. So still, you got to still get them down. They got them all down like 99.5%, accuracy. Then a couple weeks, whatever it was last week, they fire another 200. No warning. And Israel shoots down all the highest priority ones. Some get through and they do hit some air bases and one casualty. And for those that don't know, it was a Palestinian man in the West Bank. So they killed their own person. So they didn't even succeed. And part of the reason why is they aren't as tech savvy as we are. Our weaponry is a little bit better than their weaponry, but still any missile can kill anybody and do insane amount of damage. That's the scary part. So they have to figure out what the solution is. And I think a big problem with it, just as it relates to the Middle East and geopolitics, is this presidential election is because the two sides couldn't be more different.
Yeah, 100%.
But
100%.
But if you listen to Kamala recently, and she made a speech, and you can tell it was written by the Department of Defense and the military guys. The United States is still going to back Israel, no matter who is in office. It does not matter. To the extent and to the amount of support of an offensive approach, that remains to be seen. And we're really starting to see what's going to happen because Israel is going to retaliate. What they do, how they do, is remaining to be seen. And they need, Uncle Sam, they need Big Brother to be there to help them, to support them. But they can also do some serious damage without anyone's help. And they're in the driver's seat right now, in my opinion. And that's what we have to look at, just like how Putin was in the driver's seat in the beginning of the Ukraine war. And then he almost got into, he almost killed Zelensky. People forget. They were in the capital the first 2 days. Yeah. So, and they kicked them all the way out of Kiev. And now it's sort of at a stalemate. But, we'll see. Geopolitics, it's really, really crazy. Obviously, Palantir has their, side that they stand with. But this article that DV found last night, is from the National Defense magazine, and it was specifically about Maven. And one of the main things was, and as it relates to this, is the name of the magazine is, it's with the foundations laid, Pentagon is building JADC2's data backbone. Maven is the thesis. So it even said the department wanted a system that could really be the backbone of its JADC2 concept, and that's what the Maven Smart System has become. It's providing this unified common operating picture that is this real-time decision-making platform for the COCOMs and sub-service compartments. It gives it ingests data from sensors ranging from satellites to drones to ground-based radars to give operators 360-degree view of the battle space. The data can then be synthesized, analyzed, and translated into necessary to ensure it is legible and relevant so operators can make decisions faster than ever before. So put that into today's concept. CENTCOM, if you want, you can just Google it real quickly, put in US Navy assets in Middle East, and you'll see a picture basically of all the US Navy assets in the Middle East. That's CENTCOM right there. So when Iran is shooting all these missiles, they are using Maven to see where everything is coming from. So think about it. And there's a great video that CENTCOM actually released of them intercepting one of the missiles that Iran launched. And it's fucking dark as shit. It's pitch black. So I think a lot of people really need to wake up and understand you're trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet. Oh, wait, it's not even a bullet. It's a ballistic missile. So it's going 10 times faster than a bullet, and it's being done in the darkness of space. It's dark. There's no lights there. You're literally trying to intercept missiles over desert and sea. So it's an incredible feat. And that's because they're able to improve the system, and they're able to ingest all the sensors and all the information. And that is why they have suffered no casualties from that ballistic missile attack. Now, they are suffering some casualties in Lebanon right now as they are running a ground incursion. So, it's not a miracle worker, but it gives you an enormous advantage. And you're seeing that with Operation Pager. And they are just taking out Hezbollah leader after Hezbollah leader. Like, the guy gets sworn in, killed. Guy gets sworn in, killed. Guy gets sworn. It's like one guy I saw. This guy has been with the group since like 1991 or 1989. I forgot. He literally submitted his resignation. I didn't even know you can resign from a terror. This is fucking. I had no idea. You can just hand. I'm mind boggled.
It's like you hand in your 2 weeks.
That's what I looked at. I'm like, they actually, that's a thing. You can hand in a 2-week resting.
I feel like you're not, if you become a part of Al Qaeda or Hezbollah, you're not allowed to leave.
Well,
you just go for a walk and get out of it.
And the ironic part is, like, their media outlets are saying he was an Israeli spy. It's like, they would have just killed him. Like, that's not how this works. Like, he just doesn't want to get killed, which I don't blame him. But, but they're able to get all these people, and it also just goes to show you, just from a I'll call it 100% software, but from the true relationship, that symbiotic relationship that Karp talks about between human and machine, software and hardware, which is what Titan is think about it. They're gathering all this intelligence, and they're using all the data, and they're processing everything through software. And then they are using a hardware system, a weapon system, to get the target, eliminate the target. And they're trying to do this with as little casualties as possible. The issue is they are hiding out with civilians, and it's an extremely dense area. Israel actually dropped leaflets all over Lebanon, basically telling people to evacuate. And it's a really crazy situation of what's going on. Like, I think I saw the numbers this morning, like over 1 million people have been displaced. Like, it's a really sad thing of what's going on. But, that is war. And the point is, we don't want war. So it's a really, crazy thing as it relates to real world situations that we're seeing play out. But we're seeing it from Russia, from Ukraine and Israel. Those people that are using Palantir are doing better than the other side. The main player that I really want to know is their thoughts is China. because China's the one that's really watching and listening.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's so many different components to how this is playing out. And obviously the whole point of what you do is trying to connect all the dots and like try to make sense of all of it. So the Maven stuff is something we talked about that has a lot of roots in terms of government reacceleration, given we got 700 million over 5 years. Obviously Palantir is likely involved in Israel, although we can't fundamentally say if they are or not. In regards to, so let's do two more topics. This one, and then I want to get your thoughts on some of the commercial stuff. You've been posting a lot of these things on Twitter about NIH, IRS, all these like little couple $1 million deals here and there. Do you think those matter? Are those relevant, or are those just like more pieces of revenue, or do they point to a larger story about Palantir operating the government?
Very, 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 very relevant. And it's funny that you asked that, because yesterday, I think it was App Economy Insights or whatever, that account that does like the really good, graphs, the breakdown. And they did one of the United States, of the U.S. government. And it was yesterday. I'm trying to find it.
I'll pull it up right now. I think I got it.
And if you look at it, most of the pie is Department of Defense. If you can go to the other, that was it. But if you can go to the other one where it does the circle, that's a little bit easier for, I think, people visually. Yeah. So if you look at the pie, most of it is Department of Defense, Social Security, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Health and Human Services. And obviously all these have little, agencies and stuff underneath it. So if you think about it, let's just call 70% of the pie is literally the DoD, Health and Human Services, the VA, and Social Security. So basically the right side. Palantir is obviously heavily embedded in Department of Defense. They obviously do a fair amount of work with the VA, and there's a lot of room there to grow. And Department of Health and Human Services, they're huge in healthcare. They're way bigger in healthcare in a commercial standpoint than in a government standpoint, I feel, even with all their partnerships with the CDC. And the CDC, I believe, falls under the Department of Health and Human Services. And then you have Social Security. So just between that 70%, if you take out that 13%, which is the DoD, there's tons of room where all this other money is coming from. So the IRS loves Palantir, and they need Palantir because you see it with the DoD. They're able to do so much more at such real time and efficiency with so many little people. So with Maven, with Scarlet Dragon, they reran Operation Iraqi Freedom. They went from 2,000 people to 20 people. So now you can have, instead of needing 100,000 Social Security agents, maybe you need 50,000 Social Security agents. And they need to really figure out how to get their costs down because they're running out of money. And Social Security is what a lot of people rely on. The VA is obviously something they're very proud to work with and huge. So all that other money that you see that comes from the IRS, the SEC, the CDC, the Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Health and Human Services and CDC, it's all coming from these other slices of the pie. So it's extremely, extremely important. I think the difference is Palantir's focus is mostly with the military, and that's fine. And they're going to be able to still get their pieces and, do a good job. Like you saw the other day, I posted, they got like a $25 million deal from the VA, and it was only for like a year or two. So like that, I think that's a lot of money for a year or two. Obviously, is it, 500? No, it's not. So the myth of FDIC.
The myth of this was a $860 million contract, right? That was supposed to be awarded in like 2021.
No, so the FDIC, for those that don't remember, and the only reason why I know it so well is because it's a running joke every day in the Discord. It's an urban legend at this point. Is the FDIC, and for those that if you want to remember, use case when Silicon Valley Bank blew up, basically FDIC only insures up to, for at least normal people, $250,000, or depending on how many names you have on the account, basically $250,000 a person in a bank. And when the bank went bye-bye, people freak the fuck out because it's like, holy shit, FDIC can't, cover all the shit, but they stepped in, they said they will. Basically, they just printed more money and they blamed Thiel for pulling all of his money out. If you remember, they blamed Thiel for the Silicon Valley Bank because he was the first one to pull his money out. Good job, Thiel. So with the FDIC, all it basically was, there was no dollar amount, but it was a way for Palantir to get into any bank that was FDIC insured or accredited. So they can go into, I don't know how it works from a corporate structure, but they could, in theory, the Citibank in my town, that branch, they could, in theory, use Palantir if they awarded them through this, project that they would have done. It would have been no money given, but it would have been an unlimited, untapped, they are in the door, they are eligible to use you for whatever service or need you might have, no questions asked. That is what it would have been. And it would have been nice, obviously, to get into the banking sector. Obviously, that fell through. The FDIC is running through some pains. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets revived or, something happens in the next couple of years where they do something similar, reopen it, or just give it to one of the last four that were, the last four running, and Palantir was one.
Yeah, the company, or not the company, the department that I would love to see use Palantir. It's the BLS, Bureau of Labor Services. And the reason for that is because we have all these job revisions that come out every single month where we added $100,000. Oh no, we added $30,000. It's like it's like kind of insane. The whole point of Palantir at the highest of levels is to get truth from the data. And if you could have Palantir become an operating system that amalgamates all of the data, and they're doing a lot of surveys and going to actual businesses and finding that stuff out, and they have to revise it every month, and they've been doing that for the past couple of decades. What if the revisions could become 10% lower or 20% lower, which means the accuracy of it could become 80% better, right? And that, I think, is a real use case. That's like a multi-$100 million contract over the next decade that Palantir could get. They're probably not going to get it, but that is the potential of the software.
Sold me. I mean, that's obviously the whole goal, is to be able to make one common operating picture, single glass pane of truth. That is the ultimate goal. I mean, tinfoil hat time, maybe there's somebody that doesn't want the truth to be out there. I mean, that could definitely be it. But the ironic part is most Americans are fucking stupid. That's not a surprise. And even when they go and they make their 10,000 revisions and they say, okay, we added 200,000 jobs, and then next month they change it, and okay, we only added 10,000. The reality is 90% of the American people aren't going to know or care or even understand what just happened. So they should just do it anyway to save money and just be good to the taxpayer. So, we'll really see. Like I said, I think most of it is going to be the Department of Defense side. Obviously, the VA plays a big factor into it, and healthcare is going to be the big thing. And we saw it. They launched Health Start, which is their health version of FedStart.
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, last topic here. Commercial growth. We got the Nebraska medicine contract, APA, BP extension, Eaton. There's a lot of stuff happening in commercial. What are you thinking about AIP's ability to scale right now? And I mean, I'll ask the same question I asked on Palantir Week last night. When do you think we get the NVIDIA quarter of 100% growth to justify this?
I always enjoy when people bring up when is the NVIDIA quarter for Palantir. First, it will be the Palantir quarter for Palantir. It will not be the NVIDIA quarter. And like I said at the very beginning, we have to get that 40% growth, I think, to keep going. I don't know if it's going to happen this quarter, but here's the beautiful thing, and this should be no surprise for most people, especially longtime Palantir holders, is it's going to come. So whether it's this quarter or at some quarter in 2025 or 2026, the number is going to come. And even when the number comes, it's just the very beginning of the next quarter that's going to come. That's going to be even, whoa, they're doing it again. So I would just relax, enjoy the ride. It might come next quarter. It might not come till next quarter. I think we need more metrics, and I don't blame them for giving it to us, because the minute they corner themselves and say we convert on average 40% of customers after 3 months after an initial boot camp, the analysts are going to be stuck looking at that number. Oh, they didn't convert 40% this quarter. They only converted 38%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's very hard for us to, as an investor, to really get an idea. All I care is they keep growing, they keep signing deals, and if that big blowout quarter happens, great. I'm not anticipating it till 2025, whether it's purely commercial or it's a combination of the commercial and the Gov together, because I ultimately think the Gov is going to be the driver for the rest of the decade. And we're going to get it. So I just wouldn't get hung up. Oh, it didn't happen this quarter. It might happen in Q3 for 2025, but I'm very confident we're going to wake up, we're going to get an earnings result, and those graphs that you saw when they see Microsoft or NVIDIA or Salesforce, then they did 300 million, and now they're doing we're on that trajectory. And the key word is patience.
Yeah. How do you think Karp feels about all the success that the company's had this year?
I think he's I think he's ecstatic, of course. I mean, look, I was fortunate enough to see the DC office. So,
how was that experience? You went 3 weeks ago. How was that?
Great experience. Shout out to Eliano. Really appreciate you to make that happen. Thank you. It's really good to see, the employees we don't see. Obviously, we see Eliano, we see Chad, we see Pete, ex-employee, we see Sham. But to see, the average employee, that's the real hero that is the driving force of this company, because obviously it's not just Karp, it's these other 2,000, 3,000 employees. They were all happy. They all had a smile on their face. They really seemed, proud of their work. And it was a relaxed environment, which was nice. I know, at least for me specifically, I don't do well with shoulder, head over my shoulder. So the freedom to feel like we trust you to take care of your work and get shit done. And you can tell that's built into the culture, and everyone just is putting their best foot forward every day. And, they understand that, they're there for more to just collect a paycheck. And it was a really cool thing to see, especially coming from my office, which is, your traditional corporate, it's a little open, not boring cubicle, but, it's nice to see, and especially when you see those videos of my day in the life of a Facebook worker,
I saw one of those yesterday.
It's very, very different. Yeah. So
this is cool, right? S&P 500. Oh, what are your thoughts on that? I didn't ask you. We got 2 minutes left. What are your thoughts on that S&P 500? The fact that we got in to the elite club.
Look, we said it 2 years ago when Karp wrote that that letter to shareholders, that once they removed the Class F shares, that they were eligible, that they were going to get in. So it's no surprise. The one thing I want people to realize, especially as long-term shareholders like us, and I think everyone lost sight of this but me, and I'm shocked, is when they went public in 2020, Karp said one key thing to investors: we will be profitable by 2025.
Yeah.
This fucking guy delivered profitability by 2023 and S&P inclusion, which they weren't even eligible for when they went goddamn public. Now, granted, he had nothing to do with them removing that restriction. Is this guy delivered profitability and S&P inclusion all before 2024 ended. So fuck all the haters. That is the one thing I'm going to say. I just got to get that out. Everyone needs to put that in perspective. Did they have their big NVIDIA moment? Fuck you. We had a extraordinary moment, extraordinary times, better times ahead. And the one thing I'll let people live off on to leave people off on is there's an RFI out for digital soldier targeting system. If that's not Palantir, I don't know what is, because the whole thing, and you hear it, find the Coke can in the desert, that's targeting, and they're looking for a digital targeting system. And I guess what? We just targeted S&P 500. So does that mean the Dow is next?
It's exciting. And it's interesting what you said right here, where he wasn't responsible for the S&P 500 removing the restriction, because for those that don't know, if you have F-class shares, they don't allow you to get into the S&P 500.
Used to.
Yeah, they used to. One can make the argument that the S&P 500 committee looked at companies in the United States of America that were run by founders, people that had like these special shares, and they came across Palantir and they realized, holy crap, like you could make an argument that they saw the potential of the company. This is probably not what happened, but just metaphorically, they realized founder-led companies that have control, like real voting class control, that can't be the barrier to entry for them being included into the greatest index of the United States. And a lot of times those are the companies that win because the founders like Karp dedicate their entire lives to the company, which is why he's able to build it to be an S&P 500 worthy company. So I think he's just executed at a high level. And, unfortunately, I was buying the stock at high levels in 2021, but if you came in at the bottoms in 2022, stock's up 8x, 7x.
Look, for anybody that was able to buy the $5.84 bottom, congratulations. Anybody that was buying at 10 or 12 or 15 or even 18 or 20, like we said in the beginning, you did a good job. Granted, you might have had to hold it for 3 years to get above, but
it built your character. Let's just say that, holding it for 3 years.
That's why I said I invest in the company, not the stock. And Palantir is a generational, once in a lifetime company that for new people getting in, it's a little tougher as when do I jump in? What do I do? But I'll just say this, and maybe this is my bias, but I also hear it with Karp, so I feel comfortable saying it. They're still very, very early. So there is still the alpha massive growth has yet to come. The stock's definitely very expensive, but the story is barely written.
I love it. Thank you, Adam, for this. Adam's Twitter is right here. If you are not following him, please make sure to follow him. Any Palantir updates in the government business you will get from his Twitter account. And you can keep up with all the DD that he posts pretty much every single day. All right. That's it for us. For those asking in the chat, why is Amit not in India yet? Because the flight's at night. So you guys will see me Monday morning streaming from India. But we had to get this one out of the way because this one was good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Fucking best.